when you have the hardest physical experience that has ever happened to you, okay? Now you'll get athletes and you'll get trainers, you'll get guys in a room saying, I'm searching for that every day. You'll get guys that will show up to practice twice a day, every day. They're running sprints and they're going hard. They're sweating out 8, 9, 10 pounds. In between workouts, they must force themselves to hydrate, because they're sweating that much. Could you imagine working that hard? That you've got to, for hours, you've got to force yourself to a recovery process just so you can go back in and do it again. You're going to do this twice a day, every day. Now, what I just described to you might sound really elite, but on the professional level, it's everybody else. Everybody you turn left, everybody you turn right, did just what I just described. The laziest guy in the team is one of the hardest workers alive. It's just true. Any team, any sport, any way that you want to do it, you say that you're searching for this, but when you finally find it, you guys can relate wherever you did, whatever you did in athletics. If I was to ask you, what is physically the hardest exertion that you've ever done? All of you, non-athletes, fans, you played some PE classes, did whatever they had through school. You can all answer that question, goddammit. You could answer it fast. It could have been a sprint to your mailbox. Maybe that was it. Maybe it took 8 seconds, but it's the hardest thing that you've ever done. You know exactly what it was. And now let me ask you this. Let's just use the mailbox example. For some of you, that'll be what it is. I ran to my mailbox. I ran back. Boy, was I ever tired. It sure was a hot day. Did you do that again the next day? Did you do it again ever? And you see the problem? The answer to my question is no, which is why my first question of tell me the hardest physical exertion you've ever done. That's why you were able to identify it, because you did not come back. You did not do it again. Now, you have professional athletes that are searching twice a day, every day, going through all this sweat, all these pounds, and all these hours, but they're not really searching for that. It's something you say. Good for a Nike commercial, put a little swoosh on it, talk about a wall, and you're going to move your wall out there. You put a little slogan on your t-shirt. Pain is nearly weakness, leaving the body. We can do all these different things, but guys, when you reach the ultimate exertion, it's a vulnerable spot. It's not a good feeling. You want to work hard. You want to try to avoid that. You do want to try to push that wall out there, but you still know where that point is, and you still don't want to go back to it. That's just a reality. I don't tease or begrudge any of you. I'm sharing a reality, and I'm sharing this from personal experience. I also could answer the question. I also know what the hardest I was. I also knew how vulnerable I was. I also knew that I couldn't follow the golden rule and protect myself at all times. I just know what it was, and so do you. Chimaev had that his last time to bat. People will talk about, particularly in the boxing world, a guy gets knocked out, he'll never be the same. His chin's never the same. He's never the same fighter. All of this stuff. You want to know when a fighter changes? He'll change right there in front of your eyes. As soon as he's in a contest that's harder than he thought it was going to be, as soon as he's in a match that's harder than any other match he ever had, as soon as his heart rate, as soon as his scrambles, and as soon as his pulse is more difficult than anything he could emulate and attempt to simulate in practice, that's when he'll change. And he very seldomly will come back. Some do. Fedor Emelianenko, known collectively as the greatest heavyweight of all time. Brock Lesnar, Stipe Miocic, and Jon Jones will tell you Fedor is the greatest heavyweight of all time. But one thing about Fedor, he's got a quote. It's a very terrifying quote when other fighters saw it. You want to know what he said he loved? He didn't love martial arts. He didn't love getting stronger. He didn't love his team. He didn't love his coaches. He was in love with the feeling of being exhausted. That's a quote. And for people in this business, if that's true, that's terrifying. And when you watch Fedor's career, it did appear to be true. One thing he did in matches is he went hard. He went on sprints. And I bring this to you because Chimaev versus Burns was the hardest that Chimaev had ever been pushed. And it was also 15 minutes. And it was also a surprise for him. And it was also a surprise for you guys. And what does he do? He signs a contract to go 25. That's the business. That's the nature of it. I understand it, but I'm also sharing for you. That's a special guy. He then goes out and he prepares for the 25 minutes. He gets a last-minute replacement. So you can act like he was the skunk at the garden party. You'd be right to do that. But on the heels of the most trying time he's ever possessed in his young life, he did 2 takedowns. He caused 2 scrambles. He had a black belt in jiu-jitsu roll on him twice, where Chimaev has to keep his hands locked, go upside down in a 360, follow him with his hips, proceed with the takedown, where most people say, you know what? It's not worth it. I wasn't sure it was ever worth it. But the 2 times we went back to the mat and you spun back up to your feet, now I'm sure it's not worth it. It's not what Chimaev chose. He chose to push harder. He chose to stay with it. He chose to be in love with the feeling of being exhaustion. And he found a Darce choke, which is a long man's move, right? If Kevin Holland went out there and Darce choked Chimaev, at least from a positional standpoint, it would have been a huge surprise. Chimaev goes for it and he loses it. Now, this creates an exhaustion within your arms. It's something called an adrenaline dump. It will burn the best guy. 99% of all upsets you've ever seen in this sport, probably closer to 95%, involved an adrenaline dump. Chimaev stayed with it. He stayed with it a 3rd time, and he found it. And in the first round, without taking a punch, he submitted a jiu-jitsu black belt who at one point went on a 5-fight win spree, which included Jacare. Guys, this is off the top of my head. I don't have any notes here. That's impressive. Dana White has now gone to the post-fight press conference and said he's a freak of nature. That's a quote. And then Dana openly said a title fight is a challenge. This is the word that he used. And it had to do with the missing of the weight. I believe when a guy misses weight, he no longer is in the weight class that he missed. That's what I believe. And I push that solid. I push this for Paulo Costa. When a guy misses a weight, he's no longer in that weight. Andy Foster, the executive director of the California State Athletic Commission, agrees with me. So I don't know that we have a challenge, and I don't know that we have a problem. I believe what we have is a middleweight.